Listening on Talk City 91.1 FM this Wednesday at 8 p.m.
And it's just about that time. It's just after 8 o'clock here on Talk City 91.1 FM. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the crew once again. Remember, tonight they have the African Report, the African Traditional Architecture Part 2, and tonight's feature discussion, the fourth session of the UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, Africa, and the People of African Descent United for Reparatory Justice in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. And a special guest, Ms. Gaynel Curry, will be on hand. Now, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Fergus, Shabaka Kambon, and Renee Francois to the program. Let me say a very good evening to one and all.
Good evening, my brother Raskin. Good evening, all the listeners on 91.1 Talk City. Welcome to our listeners on Facebook and YouTube who are taking in us live for another edition of the Africa Report this 23rd of April 2025. As you heard, we have one feature event, and that relates to the recently concluded fourth session of the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. So we have the deputy chair of that forum, and therefore a very important person. We want you to listen. We want you to participate. We want you to share your questions. We have a WhatsApp number inside as well. I am Claudius Fergus, and my co-host this evening is Renee Francois. We will be expecting Brother Shabaka to join us later. Yes, Renee?
Yes, hi, good night to all our listeners. Thank you again for joining us. We really do appreciate our loyal listeners and followers. I'm excited to hear really the outcomes of the fourth session of the UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. I think that their team in particular was very interesting, very relevant. I myself have some personal concerns about how, in particular, the police force in the West and to a larger degree across the world is using AI and how it can negatively impact persons of African descent. But, I suspect that those topics or those issues would be covered much later on. Dr. Fergus, if you permit me, I will go straight into the report from the Secretariat.
Of course.
Right. So much of what is happening in the month of May was really covered by my co-worker last week, Ms. Khadija Dyer. So I'm here just to do some reminders and just add one or few tidbits about what to also look forward to in the month of May. So one of the first things that we would be doing in May, and that's the 3rd of May, that's a Saturday, is our monthly community mobilization and development meetings. It's really an opportunity for us at the Secretariat to meet with the community groups, the cultural organizations, religious organizations, and to share information that we would have gathered to sensitize them about issues that we think is pertinent to persons of African descent, not just here in Trinidad and Tobago, but across the diaspora, because we at ESCTT really believe in a global African community. So whatever is happening on the continent or happening in another country, once it affects us as African people, we want our community groups here to know as well. So that meeting takes place virtually. It's something that I'm really proud of that we've been able to do, was the successful transition during that period of COVID from physical meetings to virtual meetings. And coming particularly out of that COVID experience was a understanding that we are living in an increasingly technological world. And we wanted to ensure that our community groups were able to keep up with that and, just make navigating present society a lot more easier. So because of that, we did introduce a workshop to help them improve their technical capacity. So things like how to use Zoom, do you have an email, how to access your email, little things like what apps you can use to help you remember your password for your email, because A lot of our groups, they did have emails, but they often forget their passwords or even the emails themselves, and they have trouble logging in. The different features that are available on WhatsApp that makes communicating with members of their groups and even family and friends much more easier, and free online resources that can also help them carry out their activities. So it's really been exciting to have the workshops with these community groups. I do think that they appreciate it. Some groups have more capacity than others, as to be expected. But I think all in all, everybody is embracing it, and everybody is sharing the information and the knowledge that they have, and that's what I really love about our community meetings. Our community meetings is open to the public, so if you wish to get the link to join the meeting, I'm going to run the banner now that has our cell number. It's 306-3687. You can message this number. Let me know that you're interested in participating in our community meetings, and I will send you the link, and hopefully you'll be able to join us. Up next is our CPAN general meeting. For those persons who aren't familiar with the acronym CPAN, it stands for the Caribbean Pan-African Network, and ESCTT functions as the secretariat for that network, and it really encompasses quite a number of Pan-African organizations across the Caribbean who have come together to share their work, give support across the region, but also to function. The network also functions as a regional body that engages with the African Union and its different organs. And over the years, CPAN has been able to develop a really strong relationship with CEDO and ECOSOC, both of which are organs of the African Union. So we are hoping to meet with our general members on the 16th of May. And again, this is a virtual meeting.
Mommy,
1 second.
look this.
That's it, Renee?
No, sorry, I had a little visitor. My apologies. So next, as Khadija would have mentioned previously, we do have our regional spoken word competition. It's taking place on the 23rd of May, and I'm really excited to let people know that the link to register is on our Facebook page. Please do not delay, because there is a cap at which we can take with respect to how many contestants we can take for the regional spoken word. And I want everybody to just come visit our page, register. You can also go to our Facebook page and our Instagram page to see what the competitions are like and what the quality of performances and the types of pieces we expose the children to. At the regional level, children get the opportunity to select between poems, calypsos, or stories. I personally am a huge fan to see the children tell the stories, but the calypsos, the speeches, the poems, they are also really good as well. And last but absolutely not the least, it's one of, it's that special time of the year. Emancipation season is going to begin shortly. And on the 25th of May, we're going to be launching the Pan-African Festival TT, commemorating Emancipation 2025. It's going to be held at the Murchison Brown Auditorium at City Hall. The start time is going to be 5 p.m. We really want people, again, now is the time. If you're interested in the activities that we're doing, please visit our Facebook page. You'll get a lot of information about what to expect. And before we transition to the Africa Report, I wanted to let people know that our theme for this year, which I really love, I love all our themes, but this one is particularly striking a chord for me. Our theme this year is Shaping Sustainable Futures Through Reparatory Justice. And at our last CMC meeting, we had the opportunity to really kind of zero in on the theme, because we talk about sustainable development is just this very catchy phrase that everybody throws around, from politicians to policy developers to everybody under the sun. Everybody talks about sustainable development. But what does that mean for persons of African descent, and particularly at this period where we have this kind of unwavering march towards reparations and demanding reparations? And so Ms. Ake had a really amazing discussion with our community groups making that link. So that again, too, that's one of the reasons why I would love to encourage people to take to join us for our CMC meetings, because you get to be a part of these discussions, and you get to share the wealth of information that everyone has. So yes, Dr. Fergus, do you have any questions?
No, that was so comprehensive. I cannot think of anything to ask.
Okay, well, I hope I stayed within my time.
Well, the time isn't that great. It's just about 10 past, right? So we have enough time to get into the Africa report. It's not very lengthy this evening. I think it's part 2, of course. I did promise to do part 2 of indigenous architecture, and I focus more on the modern. Of course, people do have different understandings of what modernity is. You're free to post, comment, criticism, or perhaps, some information that would benefit all of us as well. I do have the WhatsApp number this time posted there, so viewers particularly pay attention, and you can make a comment, send us a voice message if you prefer, or a text message. So it's African architecture. I hope you find it interesting, just as I enjoy doing it. I always enjoy doing these Africa reports. So let's go to the Africa report.
I am trying to create buildings which I call construire des maisons qui respirent. Building breathing houses. That's what I'm trying.
That was Burkinabe Diabedo Francis Kere. In this edition of the Africa Report, we focus on how African principles inspire modern constructions. Because of time, I will limit the examples to West Africa. The presentation challenges colonial values imposed on Africa and affirms that these values can be neutralized or replaced by African philosophical and traditional values. This edition of the Africa Report aims to demonstrate how modern architects successfully incorporate deep-seated African principles into contemporary buildings, which qualify in every way as modern architecture. These principles may define the entire structure or appear as motifs such as Adinkra symbols and pictograms to inspire uniquely African architectural designs. Consider, for example, the house constructed by American-born Obadele Kambon, now a Ghanaian citizen. His house replicates the Pyramid of Kemet, or ancient Egypt, and Nubia. The external walls and inner staircases are embellished with Ghanaian Adinkra symbols, like many Ghanaian buildings. On his front door is a carving of the Kemetic or ancient Egyptian account of creation, a creation story that is thousands of years older than the Hebrew or biblical Genesis mythology. He explains to an interviewer.
So this place is called Khamnu, and what you'll notice is that the structure has 8 sides. You'll notice that the chandelier that's hanging up there of Dinya wood also has 8 sides. You'll notice that the lights on the wall, those also have 8 sides. There are hanging lights around, and all of those also have 8 sides. So you'll see a lot of significance in terms of 8. And to really understand it, we can actually go to the front door, and I'll show you what those actually represent. These are cut stone, of course, from Ghana.
Initially, triangular shapes.
So we'll go into the significance of why those are triangles. So this is the front door. It took a year to carve this front door. It's a single piece of mahogany wood. And when you see the 8, these are the 8 original Nechiru, the 8 original divinities of classical Kemet, a place called Khamnu, which is a place of the 8. And in the creation story there was the idea that in the beginning, everything was wet.
Everything was wet.
Right. W-E-T. So that was represented by Noon and Naunet, right? So that's masculine and feminine wetness. Everything was hidden. So that's represented by Amen and Amenet. So that's masculine and feminine hiddenness. Everything was dark. So you have Keket and Ket. This is feminine and masculine darkness. You have Hehet and He, and that's feminine and masculine infiniteness. So it's before anything took place, before there was any movement, before creation was created, before anything came into being, that was a state of being.
Although he did not mention it, I perceive elements of traditional West African architecture in Kambon's roof and ceiling, which seem to be influenced by the spider's web. The two most common symbols that inspire modern Ghanaian architecture are the royal stool and the spider's web, or Anansi's web. Interestingly, painted on a small stela in the courtyard of Cape Coast Castle is a red spider, or pink spider, as if to remind Ghanaians and diasporans that Anansi was also taken captive through the door of no return. There's a large hotel in Cape Coast in the shape of a spider's outer webbing, while the ceiling of every room features a different stylized pattern of a spider's web. The roof of the W.E.B. Du Bois Mausoleum in Accra is inspired by Anansi's webbing. The royal stool of the Akan, especially of the Ashanti nation, is another artistic motive that lends itself to grand architectural forms. One of the best-known examples is Jubilee House in Accra, the official residence and office of Ghana's president, and a heritage symbol in the city. David Ajayi, the architect who designed the mega cathedral that President Akufo-Addo had embarked upon, was also inspired by the Golden Stool. David Ajayi must also have been influenced by the Golden Stool in designing the National Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C. The administration building at the UWI Cave Hill campus, Barbados, is similarly designed. I was in Ghana when Sir Hilary Beckles expressed his desire to apply the Golden Stool design to the building, the only one of its kind in the Caribbean. The foundation plaque was even laid by the Asantehene, Otumfo Osei Tutu II. The building has since been named in Beckles' honor as the Hilary MacDonald Beckles Administration Complex. Indaba has previously introduced one of Africa's most celebrated architects, Francis Kere, born in Burkina Faso. Kere's architecture is inspired by traditional music, traditional architecture, African women pounding fufu, rice, etc., and nature such as giant African anthills and living trees.
And the women come in this position, beating, like you can see, and giving water, really, beating, hours. And by music, you can't see it.
That's Kere, demonstrating the rhythm of work. Kere was recognized more than 20 years ago when he built a school in his home village in Gando, Burkina Faso, in 2001. He has also built a public library in Gando and the Parliament building of the Republic of Benin. The school utilizes bricks made of mud using the ancient method combined with cement. The raised roof allows for free airflow, while the exaggerated extension of the roof protects the bricks from heavy rainfall. I see Anansi's influence in the design of the steel that supports the roof. Kere also cast handmade clay pots in the canopy of the library to provide a unique array of natural lighting. For the design of the Beninese Parliament, Kere was inspired by the pre-colonial practice of debating community matters under large trees, which have since been called palava trees or ar palava, meaning talking trees in Beninese patois. A similar tree influence is seen in Kere's community center complex in Komogwel in Mali, and another structure within Mali's national park. Like his junior revolutionary kinsman, Ibrahim Traoré, Debedo Francis Kere's contribution to the African Renaissance through the modernizing of indigenous African architecture is felt beyond the borders of his birthplace. Besides the Republic of Benin, his work is to be seen in Kenya's Startup Lions campus and Mozambique's Benga Riverside School. Kere has also designed some of the 21st century's most innovative buildings outside of Africa, such as the iconic Serpentine Pavilion in London, which reflects the tree canopy concept, and Tippett Rise Art Center in Montana, USA, which creatively uses bundled tree logs. Modern African architecture, inspired by traditional principles, showcases the rich heritage and deep-rooted symbolism inherent in African culture. These buildings stand as a testament to the enduring legacy of African philosophy and values, beautifully integrated into contemporary designs. So that's your Africa report for this week. African architecture featuring the modern. Renee, what are your thoughts on this production?
Usual very good Africa report. I do remember when that administrative building was erected and opened in Barbados. I remember feeling a little jealous that something similar was not happening at the St. Augustine campus, but nonetheless, it was something that, as a Caribbean national, I was very proud of, that there was this very strong African symbol on the university campus. I've always had or been a fan of what Nubian and Egyptian aesthetic. And so it was interesting seeing that first gentleman, Kambon, really sort of incorporate that. I love this door. Interesting that it took a whole year. But I don't know if I would be so patient. But yes, I really didn't particularly enjoy this Africa report.
Do you remember Cambon at all?
No.
The name doesn't ring a bell?
He looks familiar, but no.
We had him on Indaba once when we were talking about Gandhi on the campus of the University of Ghana. Remember that?
No, I can't.
Yes, Shabaka interviewed him, and we had real problems hooking up with him live.
Okay.
So we had to end up recording him and playing the recording.
Okay.
He was the lead activist to remove the statue from the campus.
Yes.
He's now a citizen, and from the 2019 invitation for particularly African Americans to come back, the 419 idea they were pushing, but he had been in Ghana before quite some time. He's a linguist, that's why he's so familiar with so many African languages. So I think he teaches in the language or linguistic center. So it's
right. So now I'm not sure if that was for Indaba, if it was for a lecture series.
Yeah, no, Indaba. We had him for Indaba. We were discussing the spreading of the Gandhi statue across the African continent. Yeah, so that's him. And of course, I started with him because of the antiquity and the origin of African of Nile Valley civilizations, particularly Kemet. So to go back, it's like going back to the beginning. We know, of course, Kemet had its beginnings deep inside of Africa, but the highest expression was in Kemet and in Nubia. So it shows you how these ancient values can inspire you in creative ways.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the reason that I featured that.
Okay.
Yeah, we would like to see perhaps more of that in the Caribbean, more of the ideals that influence African architecture also being projected in the Caribbean. Yeah. And you can see his handiwork in all of his work there, particularly. Yeah, he has won the highest awards for architecture. So he's known around the world. And he focuses on ensuring his buildings have excellent natural ventilation. That's the reason for the roof. And the mud blocks have certain advantages. I'm seeing that actually being adopted in California, where they have all these crazy and
Fires.
because the blocks resist fires.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying now those buildings might even be burned and remain standing. So that is a feature of mainly the Sahelian
Mm-hmm.
regions where stone is scarce, but mud is very
It's
abundant.
plentiful. And wouldn't those clay blocks also naturally keep the rooms cooler?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I don't know if you know at all, but I'm old enough to know when, country people used to store water in clay cupboards.
Yes.
And it was like drinking iced water. The water was always cool, never got warm, no matter how hot the day was. And it's a similar effect that type of mud building has
Mm-hmm.
on the air inside of the houses. They do
Mm-hmm.
not get hot and they do not get very cold. They're comfortably cool. Yeah, so perhaps we can bring on our guest at this time.
Okay, no problem.
Good evening to no stranger at all, Miss Gaynel, Diana Curry. Welcome once more to Indaba. I would fully introduce you in a short while. Would you like to comment on the Africa report at all?
No, thank you so much. Good to be here, Fergus, and thanks so much for having me. I was listening in and learning a lot. I did not know about the architecture, and so I have a lot to learn. I realized that, and so it's really very interesting for me, just because it was so new to me, and the creative ways in which we actually adopted some of those into our own culture here in the Caribbean. Very nice, very nicely done.
Thank you. So congratulations, Ms. Curry. Congratulations.
Thank
On
you.
your elevation to what I consider not just a post, but the second highest responsibility for the next year of the Permanent Forum. You are now the deputy chair, and that means we have another Caribbean personality close to the top, if not at the very top of this august body. Very important body for taking us into the future, well, into the present as well, and near future for reparatory justice, civil rights, human rights, and everything else. Ms. Curry is an adjunct faculty member at the University of the Bahamas. She has worked on human rights with the United Nations for more than 23 years. She has served on the Gender and Women's Rights Advisor in the OHCHR in New York. That means the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR. She also oversaw work on the International Decade for People of African Descent. Of course, that takes you back a few years in the first for the first session. And that means building on assignments that would have followed that historic declaration in 2001, the Durban Declaration and Program of Action to end racism and promote the rights of people of African descent. And of course, as I said, she's now the vice chair of the United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. Welcome to Indaba, and we hope to have a great discussion this evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let me just inform the listeners and viewers that this forum took place from the 14th to the 17th of April. That's recently. At least the main events took place there. There were lots of side events and even some pre-events as well. And I want to say our own sister Zakia Uzoma Wadada was there at the forum
there.
at the very beginning, and she was there representing the Trinidad and Tobago National Committee on Reparations. And therefore, I want to publicly appreciate the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs for fully financing the participation as a member of the National Committee for Reparations.
Yes.
Okay, so Ms. Curry, and let me call you Gaynel here.
Please do.
Forward. So Gaynel, something that I heard people talking about, just a softball to start up. Okay. There were a number of non-African representatives, and perhaps some people say a preponderance of them, speaking for African peoples at that forum. So, what are the benefits, if any, and what are the red flags, if any, from such, interventions that seem to be getting more and more? I don't want to name anybody, but you would know, you were there. And that kind of intervention often happens when African people are fighting for their rights. You suddenly find that type of intervention. Is that a good thing? Or is that something we should be wary about?
Let me first of all say thank you again for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be here. I got another elevation at the university. I'm now associate professor of law in the law university out there. But yes, before I get to that question, I also want to say that I am truly humbled that my colleagues saw fit to have me as vice chair and that they have their confidence in me to be able to perform well. I think Dr. June Suma laid an excellent foundation for us in the Caribbean, and we're all very proud of her as she was our chair and for the last year. So she did an awesome job. So I want to say that I think the forum has been blessed to have two very strong women from this region. We also had Epsi Campbell-Barr. She was fantastic, followed by June Suma. And I told our current chair, Martin Kimani, who's in Kenya, he has some tall stilettos to fill. And those ladies are dynamic and did a phenomenal job in the first 2 years. So I just want to say a shout out to all my colleagues in the forum, and particularly the former chairs, and to remind the chair that he has my full confidence and another set of stilettos behind him. So I'll start with that. But yes, I did, regarding your specific question, Fergus, I did notice other people in the room. That's true. That's very true. We know that when we fight, people of African descent, we're not only fighting for us. Often we're fighting an unjust system, an unjust process. And where there's injustice anywhere, we know we're there to fight that injustice. So I want to say that it's not about necessarily saying, it's only for people of African descent. We had a big discussion at the beginning of this discussion of our time in the forum, and this is our fourth session, whether we're talking about Africa. And the discussion was whether we should just be speaking about people in the diaspora. Are we talking about sort of the colonial enslavement processes, or are we speaking about, current day migrants? Who exactly are we speaking? That's been a debate. And we know that we're speaking primarily about all those people. Even though we speak about people of African descent, we also speak about Africans, and we often say Africans and people of African descent, but we're speaking generally about everyone. When I was on one of the panels, particularly, I think the one on Haiti, and when I spoke earlier on anyway, at the beginning of the forum, I spoke about the issue of allyship. And I think that we ought to be embracing allies. Each of our movements, whether it be in any Caribbean country, globally, we've had allies who are not necessarily people of African descent or even Black. I think of my own country, the Bahamas, when we speak about majority rule and the Progressive Liberal Party that actually won majority rule, the first Black party in the country. That party was started by 3 white Bahamian men. And it was the first party to really win majority rule for Black people. So we recognize that they're allies. And so we don't want to start building bridges or walls, as some people may speak about walls, building tall walls. We want to have a process, I think, that is comprehensive and inclusive, but not that distracts from what it is we're trying to achieve, which is justice. Reparatory justice, yes, for what we went through in terms, what we enslavement and colonialism and all the other isms, including systemic racism, which we still face. We want to keep that to the center of the discussion, but also to recognize that there are others among us, I think, indigenous in the Caribbean, who have faced great injustices, and in the Americas as well, and others who are fighting. I think even in the CARICOM 10-point plan, we talk about our Caribbean brothers and sisters who are indigenous to these territories, who also suffered a great loss, and consideration should be given to them in terms of reparations. So when we think about others joining the space, not taking over, we have to make sure that doesn't happen, but joining the space. And you're right, oftentimes people come and get what they need out of the movement. And that ought to be okay, as long as it is about justice for people that have been suffering an injustice. I will leave that there. I hope I sufficiently answered that question. I am about allyship, and I think that the persons who are on our side, whether they be of any ethnicity, I am happy, or race, I'm happy to have them on board. I would end with this one point. One of my students said to me the other day about how we may be having new enemies. And I said to him, don't frame it in terms of enemies. I don't necessarily see them as enemies. I see systems as enemies, systems and processes that keep us down. So we're fighting systems, we're fighting processes. We're not fighting and targeting individual people and saying I hate him or her or them. It's I am fighting to dismantle this unjust system. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Okay, so Gaynel, this is the fourth. This was the fourth session, and you would have been there active, perhaps not at the executive level, but you were very much involved from the third session throughout the year. So could you tell us what are the objective successes, that is successes that we can identify clearly, that happened over the course of the last year compared to the previous year? And what are the new objectives going forward coming out of the fourth session? In other words, are we moving forward? Are we moving forward? When we look at the third session and then the fourth session, have we moved the bar forward? And what are the indicators that would indicate that we are moving forward?
I believe that I can see progress from the time we started this work with the first session. And, I can see the numbers have increased in terms of participants generally, although I know I can say that in this fourth session, I think due to other issues, some persons fell off. We had, for example, over 1,000 persons, 1,100 persons registered this time around. And we only got about, not only, I think it's still quite a significant number. We had in the room about 900 people plus. So a little shy of what we wanted was the 1,000 mark. We can say that when we first started our very first session, we had about 300 people in the room. So engaging people, that is, we can see that there has been some positive response there. More people know about the forum and what we do, that we exist. We have traveled a lot more since then, going to various communities, speaking about the forum, speaking about what we intend to be doing, building that partnerships, that allyships, strengthening our networks across the region. We've met in the Caribbean more than once. We've met in Barbados twice, as a matter of fact. We've been in Colombia. We've been in Brazil, also to Africa, and so in Ghana, in significant numbers, and all across the United States and in Canada and so forth. So the word is getting out. That to me is already a plus. Many people didn't know what we were talking about. As I mentioned, people didn't know what we meant by people of African descent. Some people were still not certain about reparations. When I worked for the UN for 20-something years, I can tell you I've been trying to put that word in many people's speeches, my boss's speeches, to have it crossed out. And so there was no discussion around this issue, no thought of it. And I can tell you that right now I've heard the word reparations coming from as high as the Secretary General's office. I've heard the High Commissioner speak about it. And so it is, and it's spoken of in so many different spaces around the UN and globally. We've seen it taken up more consistently in the media, and all traditional and modern media. And so I do believe that I see some progress in terms of hearing more about, or people understanding more about who we are as people of African descent, what we're fighting for, what we mean by justice. And I think it even, I can't say that we take all of that credit, but I think we have strong allies like Prime Minister Motley and other leaders around the Caribbean have spoken out significantly about these issues. So I see progress. Significantly. And I know we're going to, I just want to mention the issue of Haiti. I've been putting that issue forward for quite some time. Reparations, systemic discrimination, those issues have been on our agenda for every single session, right? So we've talked about reparations. So we've put reparations to the center of the work that we're doing because we're about justice. And we recognize development is too important to us, but we recognize we cannot have development through sustainable development as we work toward the 2030 agenda and the 17 sustainable development goals. We cannot have that without a true discussion around reparations. So we keep bringing that issue into the discussion when others want us to speak about development, speak about development aid, yes, we're happy to speak about that, but we have to do it in the context of reparations. And we cannot have reparations without a discussion on Haiti. And bringing Haiti to the center of our discussion has been so important. And I think the Haitian collective, the Haitian community, I'm hearing from them all the time, thanking the forum for placing Haiti high on our agenda. And I have said, and I said just last week, that every time I speak about Haiti. I mention Haiti in my speeches and saying that that's the injustice of all injustices when we think about the need for reparations. And you can draw, as the Secretary General said himself, you can draw a straight line from enslavement, colonialism, the debt payment that they were forced to make in gold francs to France when they themselves had nothing. That you can see the underdevelopment and the impact that has had on the country. So I see growth in those areas. I see people embracing those issues around reparations, and I see the discussion around reparations playing out in a very positive way in the media. When we bring Haiti to the center of that discussion, I think we have such a strong moral argument, and I think a strengthening legal argument. The day of or the day before, we had our discussion on Haiti at the forum last week, which was the 200th anniversary of Haiti's debt payment to France. I would call it a ransom that they were forced to pay for their freedom, even though they had won the war. They had won that revolution, and they were not allowed to function as a country. They were, for 60 years, almost 60 years, they were not recognized by the United States. For more than 20 years, they were not recognized by France and the UK and others. So just to say that, what has happened to them is real, and the forum to have a small part in that. I can't say that we're taking all the credit for it, but I think we had a small part in that. And just before we had our big discussion on that day, the 200th anniversary, the president of France said that he's setting up a commission to look into this issue. And so, the last time we heard someone put this in a way that was not receive was President Aristide. He talked about the need for reparations, on the need for restitution. And we saw what happened there. So there's a lot that I can say that we in the forum are engaging, embracing. We're happy to be a part of what's happening. We provide the forum with the only space that provides a forum that people of African descent can come in and speak about these issues. And we intend to guard that space because we know what's happening now in terms of the geopolitics. So we have to guard that space, protect that space, and ensure that we use that space to advance those issues that are important to us. Reparations is one thing that I can say we've moved on. And Haiti is something that we have moved on. This past discussion, this past session, we talked also about women of African descent. We can say that that's something we've moved on. We've been very instrumental in fighting for a second decade that we spent the whole of last year talking about that. From just one full year, everywhere we went, we were speaking about why we need a second decade. And so, yeah, those are some of the accomplishments. I can't say that we did it on our own. We had some strong allies, we still do. But I believe that we have worked hard to keep these issues alive, to bring them to every single space that we enter. With Haiti, as I mentioned, we prepared a position paper. I didn't say that earlier, but what I mentioned in my statement last week was that we are not going to let the name of Haiti rest. Go silenced. We're not going to be silent on that. And every single space in the UN. So our position paper has made recommendations to the Security Council, as high as the Security Council, about what's going on right now in Haiti and what they're doing. We've made recommendations to the Human Rights Council because we know it's a political issue, highly political. It's a security issue, highly insecure right now. It's a human rights issue. Many people are dying. They're starving. Their rights are being denied. Their basic fundamental rights to food, water, and peace, development, all of that. We've made recommendations to ECOSOC. It is very much an economic issue, a development issue that needs to be taken forward. And we know that it is an administrative issue that we've said to the Secretary General, you have to take this forward. And these are some of the things that you need to be considering as you move in your spaces. So we're not going to let Haiti's name go silent. We're going to keep Haiti at the forefront of our discussions around reparations. And we're going to keep talking about this throughout the entire next 10 years. And so I hope at the end of this 10 years, this second decade, we can see even more progress.
I agree. And the macro statement is perhaps, well, I hope it becomes a milestone, an important milestone, and not just, strategic talk, because it came on the anniversary.
Yes.
And we know that France is facing heavy backlash in Africa. So, you have to be careful. It's not just a strategic, conciliatory statement that you would have made. But I want to just, before I move on to the AI issue, which is very, very important, not only for us as adults, but particularly for young people, I think, because they are the future and they are more into AI naturally than people like myself would be. But there is a conference on the 9th, between the 9th and the 11th in Nantes. You know the historical importance of Nantes in the slave trade in France. There is a discussion there. I saw the program, and Haiti is not on the program, which was shocking to me. Haiti was not on the program, although it's billed as a reparatory conference. So I persuaded one of the presenters to ensure that Haiti is addressed. Now, that was before Macron made a statement. I saw one person, I can't remember the name, of one person from CARICOM is at that meeting. Are you aware of that meeting? And should CARICOM and the Permanent Forum not have some footing in that?
I am not aware of the meeting.
Particularly, from what you said about Haiti?
Yeah, we need to be at that meeting for sure. Both CARICOM and the Forum should be at that meeting. And, to me, it baffles me that we would have I'm now preparing a reparations conference in South Africa, in Pretoria, in you know, in recognition of the AU's year. So, and this is what I said, you know, we have a number. I looked at the program this morning, and I said, Haiti's not on this program. Why? We have to find a way to get Haiti in this program. So my question is, so we brought the forum in, and we brought CARICOM in, and we're seeing how we can bring, you know, key strategic persons into the room. But CARICOM has done more on reparations than most other regions, right? I think we're leading the way, and there are many of the Latin American countries, I would say, and others are looking to what CARICOM has done and to our 10-point plan, right? So CARICOM should be around the table speaking about what we see. We represent a significant community of people of African descent who had the full brunt of enslavement and colonialism and all of it, and we still suffer from the injustice of climate that was, you know, result of what the developed world has done, and still the economic issues with respect to justice. So we have a lot to bring to the table, and we've had a lot of reflections on it. I think we've gone far in terms of our reflections on it. We have the support of it at the very highest levels of our countries. My Prime Minister has spoken about it, Prime Minister Davis, and others. So it is really high on the agenda, and it means something to us. We've thought it through, and I think to have CARICOM around the table on any discussion around reparations is really important. And to bring Haiti not just to be on the menu, so to speak, but to be around the table discussing what ought to happen. Civil society in Haiti and in the diaspora, they're working very hard on this issue. They have been for many, many years, even under threat of their own lives. And so this is meaningful to them. They know what they want. When we speak of Haiti, Haitians need to lead the process. They need to say what they want when they think about reparations and restitution, what that means to them. But we want them to know that we are their allies, and when they sit around that table, we have their back. I said the other day that, you know, they were our North Star when we were looking at freedom from enslavement. They were our North Star. You know, we if they could do it, we could do it. That's what was being said, right? And now we have to be their allies. We have to be their loudest champions in the room, because they led the way for all our freedom. I feel it was beginning, and it was the beginning of the end of enslavement. That's my view. And we saw it a few years after the revolution. The Brits decided that they're going to end the trade. It was within years, like 3 years or so. So, you know, it had an impact. And we began to see, you know, just the dismantling of enslavement. And so I think we have a long way to go to get that message out there. But I think that every single discussion around reparations must include Haiti, and CARICOM should aim to be around that table in support of Haiti and in support of all Caribbean people.
Indeed, indeed. Our radio fans would be leaving us at the top of the hour. So let's touch on the issue of artificial intelligence. It made an entry into the program of the fourth forum. So could you explain for us the significance of artificial intelligence with respect to reparatory justice?
You know, I think it was really brilliant. My colleague Pastor from Colombia really was insisting that we look at it, and I'm so happy that he did, because it is the now and it is the future, whether we like it or not. The now, today I was discussing this very same issue in a staff meeting. How do we deal with AI? Right? The students want to engage AI, and many of us who are traditionalists in our teaching and our learning and so forth as educators, you know, we're hesitant about AI. That's because, and I feel it's because we do not know it. We do not understand it. Our young people do, and we have to embrace it, find a way to embrace it, and find a way to see how we can make it work within the education environment and in different spaces. But I'm very happy that the forum decided to use AI, to have AI as its in its overarching theme for this year, because it places us in a it's so relevant, right? It says that we at the forum are not only looking back, but we're reaching forward. We're recognizing that the injustices of the past must be recognized today, fully understood, and taken forward in the future. How we are portrayed in the media, how AI may be used to portray us in negative ways, or to to just limit some of the things that we have done. I think it's important when we as women, for example, speak, how we are presented, what our narratives are. We have to be a part of that process. And a lot of the narratives are going to be taken over by AI. So we need to be a part of that process. And at the very least, we're saying in the forum, we need to understand it. We need to understand it as Black people, what it means for us, how it can shape carry our own messages forward. Right. So we know that right now the challenge has been, and I talk about how we use the forum to create that space for Black people to speak, to spread the message of what our fight is about and what we want to do, and to it is important that we use these tools that our young people understand and that the rest of the world is using to carry our narrative, our messages forward, and not allow and sit back and say, oh, this is too complicated, or this has nothing to do with that. It does, and it does now, and it will even more so in the future. So the sooner we get on top of these issues, the sooner we can embrace AI in terms of how we share that message, how we portray ourselves, how we control is not quite the word, but yes, perhaps control, for want of a better word right now, control the message for ourselves. Right now, I believe that we don't have full control of the narrative of what is being said about us. And I saw that recently, especially in our neighboring countries. But just to say that the message that is out there, we have to be able to embrace it. First of all, understand it, understand the tools, how they work, engage in it, and then somehow get on top of this message and ensure that in the future, when we do use AI, it portrays us in the way that we want to be seen, and it is used not as a tool to do racial profiling against us, to change the narrative of history, to rewrite history, to to limit our experiences. We have to be involved in it. If we are not involved in it, we're just going to be on the menu and for others to take our issues forward. I think the forum is so right in the space because we're dealing with the past. Yes, what happened to us, the realities of enslavement and so forth, but also we're looking at how can we correct it now and in the future. Reparations is about the future. AI is about the future. We have to, and AI is a tool, a medium through which we can get the message of reparations out there. I really do believe that we're sitting at a very interesting crossroads, the forum, because we're embracing the future with AI, we're looking to our allies to help us do that, and trying to shape a little bit more clearly our narratives, as I said, while trying to bring that discussion and not allow others to erase our history and determine our messages and how we want to be portrayed in them. There's a narrative about Black women that I don't like, that we're rowdy, we're bossy, we're pushy, we're too aggressive. And so I want AI to reflect us differently, because we're not necessarily that. We're confident, right? And so how can we use these tools to portray out and ensure that they portray us in a positive way? That's kind of where I sit with it. And I was really impressed by the presentations last week on AI, and just thinking to myself, because I work on the intersections of women and race, and I realized that I need to, I call it all the time, womanhood and blackness, and so I need to also sharpen my knowledge of AI and how I can use that tool to take forward some of the messages that I want to say on those particular issues and those considering those intersections.
Okay, Gaynel, let me see if I can get it a little clearer for our listeners, because I myself,
Sure.
it's a gray area for me, I must confess.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so beyond the narration, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore, like algorithms on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
so all those things we know have been racialized and so on, and all those things
Definitely.
use artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
But would there be setting up a task force sort of in order to explore? Because to me, it's not fine-tuned yet. Because AI has a lot more than just about narratives and perspectives and images and so on. AI is leading us into a completely new world of work and so on. AI, it's threatening to replace, the human labor and even human intelligence in so many areas and so on. And so my concern is, how does it relate in a general way to the issue of reparatory justice that we are concerned about? That aspect is not very clear to me.
Mm-hmm. And one of the outcomes from the discussion on AI at the Permanent Forum was exactly that. How do we set up a or a process, a working group? We're still trying to figure out what that's going to be, but recognizing that we have to come together to discuss this. It's very new for us as well, I would confess. And so we're trying to work our way through it. So one of the recommendations is to put together a working group to study this issue and to see how we can use it to our benefit. And you're right, it's more than just images and narratives. And for me, it's a lot about that, because that's where the message goes, and that's what determines what happens to us, whether we win or lose, whether we get a job or not, whether we are allowed to get into school or not, or all of it is a part of it. But we have to study that more. We recognize, first of all, that if we're not on top of it, as I said, if we're not engaging in it, we are going to be left behind. It is a tool that we can consider because it takes forward our message. It is a lot about messaging. Right now, for me, reparations is the message that we're taking. How can AI help us with that message in all aspects of it, right? How we use it, what it's becoming, how it is changing our world, how we're being taken over. Our jobs may be taken over by AI, other forms of work, other the replacement of human beings. And who are those human beings going to be? Is it going to be mainly us? That's a kind of question that we have. But this is very new for us, again, I will say. And I think we have to get on top of, first of all, understanding it and what it means for ourselves. And then also, how can we use it to protect the messages that we're trying to get out and to help us in that fight toward reparation. That's where we're at. So we're still almost building the plane while we're flying it. So we are ready in the age of AI. It started for us already. How can we gain from it? That's catching up, many of us have to do in terms of learning, but also trying to shape a little bit what the narratives are for us and how we hope to use it. And also in the future, how we can embrace it and bring younger people on board. A big part of the discussion also is how we can embrace youth. That was mentioned. So many young people took the floor and said it precisely that. And I think when we bring young people on board and then we bring them into the discussion of reparations, reparations is a lot about them, perhaps more about them than about us. But so we need them in the discussion because they understand these issues better. And we haven't published our recommendations yet, but a full set of recommendations. But we have said that there's need for more studies on this. That was among the recommendations, and the need to come together to analyze and assess where we are right now and where we want, how we want to take this forward. And the permanent forum is suggesting that it could be a space that where we can have that discussion on how we move it forward. The challenge for us in the permanent forum is still the one we had from day one. That's resources, and it's very, very limited. We meet once a year with a very tiny budget, and so we've been able to do a lot with that. But we have to keep in mind that that is the reality of what it is. So we can create that space. One of the things we're hoping to do is to have more regional meetings. So when we get at regional level, we can discuss these issues in a little bit more detail, understanding the reality of the spaces that we're in. We know that we have not, for an example, adequately embraced people of African descent in Asia, and there are many. We haven't embraced significantly Europe. There are many. And so we have to think about how can we move forward, and when we get in these spaces, perhaps how we can more strategically embrace new tools like AI to take the message forward.
Okay, so my last question this evening is with respect to the next 12 months, so to speak. What should we expect of the permanent forum over the next 12 months in terms of priorities, programs, outcomes, and so on? What do we expect from the permanent forum?
I will begin by that response by saying that the forum is really a space provided for people of African descent. It provides a space for us to get together, to prioritize our concerns, our issues, and to make recommendations to UN entities and others for change. So primarily to human rights, because a lot of our issues about human rights, but also to the General Assembly, which is we're talking to all states that are members of the UN. A much smaller number in the Human Rights Council. But what we're going to be doing in the next 12 years, first, is to continue what we have been doing, prioritizing reparations, prioritizing systemic racism, embracing the decade and reminding and trying to also raise some funds to do that, reminding states and the UN that they have to put their money where their mouth is, right? You cannot tell me that you're serious about addressing the concerns of people of African descent and you give it zero budget. You're showing me something different than you're telling me. And so one of the things we're going to be doing is really pushing to have additional funding to do this work. The second thing we're going to be doing, or in fact, the third thing, because the first was to continue, but the second is to raise funds and to really try to see how we can strategically do that. The third thing is to embrace other communities of Black persons. I've mentioned already Asia and Europe. I think we can do a much better job there. So we're going to be looking at meeting persons of African or people of African descent in their communities. So a big part of the fundraising is going to be how can we get to Brazil as a group, a full group? How can we get to Africa? How can we embrace Africa and bring them into this discussion? How can we look at communities of Blacks in France and in the UK, in the Netherlands, and other spaces where they too are facing significant discrimination? How do we embrace Asia? Right? I think that there's a lot to be said. It's often quiet about there. So we're trying to see how we can get to those in their communities. We're going to hopefully be going to Canada in a couple of months to speak with the diaspora there. And how can we meet them in their spaces to hear them? Sometimes when we have 1,000 people in the room, each person having 2 minutes to speak, because that's what the UN has given us, a very, very limited resources in terms of funding, limited resources in terms of the duration of our meeting is 4 days, once a year. And so to get everybody to speak, we have to sort of be quiet and listen, which is fine. Each of us we were allowing ourselves to also only take 2 minutes, which is really not sufficient to have any kind of real discussion about people's concerns. So you're just getting a touch of what's happening, and you listen for trends, when you get in those spaces. But what we need to do is go into communities that is not directly funded by the UN. That was not immediately our mandate, but we recognize that this mandate cannot be effectively fulfilled without going into African and people of African descent, into their communities and speaking with them and hearing their priorities and having a moment to think a little bit more strategically about how we can address these issues. It's difficult to do that for in 4 days for once a year. So our priority then will be, how do we get into communities to strategically speak about some of these issues. One of the issues for us in the next 12 months is to see how we can move the needle a little bit more on the Haiti discussion, and to actively seek to implement the recommendations that we put forward in the position paper. I held the pen for the position paper, for the drafting of that paper. It's very near and dear to me. And I'm going to be doing everything I can. Of course, my colleagues are doing the same thing, to see how we can implement some of these recommendations, which are really to the UN, to say that they need to do better and to do it in all those spaces. So, and all of the recommendations that have gone in the past, and we have many that need to be implemented. And I will, in my role as vice chair, one of the things I want to do is to see how we can more strategically go through those and the current ones coming up, and identify some key ones that we're going to put to the forefront. I mentioned Haiti. That's one of the ones that's going to be in there for me. Women and girls is going to be there for me. Haiti, of course, in the context of reparations, but also restitution and the current realities of that country. But those are some of the issues that we will continue. And for us, the Durban Declaration and Program of Action continues to be a central part of what it is we do. Systemic racism is about what we live every single day. So that will very likely remain on the agenda. Data collection, and that I think is more perhaps strategically done at the national level. And so when we make those efforts to engage at the community and national level, I think we have a better chance to get kind of data of where people are, how many of us are where we are, and so forth. We don't even know basic numbers, right? And what are our specific currents. So those are going to be the key issues for us. And of course, within this year, we're going to be finalizing the declaration for people of African descent. That is still on our agenda. It is in our mandate. And we will be prioritizing that as well. And one of the things I love about it, particularly the AI discussion, is we're going to be trying to get that included in the declaration. We're definitely going to be including reparations and of course, systemic racism. But some of these broader issues that we discussed, we will be trying to see how we can include them in the declaration. As you know, that's negotiated and discussed by states, but we have a mandate to help develop it, which we are taking very seriously, and trying to see how we can take our recommendations into that declaration as well. So that's generally what we're going to do. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Without a doubt, it's a lot, but it's what I like about the way we work as a forum is, and we've been working very well together. We've had a very strong group, and so each of us have prioritized some issues that we're going to be taking forward. It's not that I have no interest in systemic racism, but some of my other colleagues have been doing a very good job of taking that forward. Some of them are doing an excellent job linking it to the DDDPA, linking it also to Pan-Africanism and systemic racism and so forth. So, others have been taking forward the AI discussion, others on LGBTQI issues. We haven't heard much about that this time around, but that's a crucial issue, and how that intersection of Blackness and sexual identity plays out in many spaces. So each of us have really, because we can't do all of it, so each of us have taken, sort of tasked to take certain things forward. And we are very clear on developing our strategic plan. We were in Barbados in December of last year, and we started the framing of our strategic plan. And it's exactly to do what you're asking, Fergus. How are we going to prioritize this year and the next 10 years? I think that we're well on our way. We, as the current membership, we only have 2 more years in this space. So I'm hoping that we can ground this work significantly, so that whoever takes over in another 2 years has a good platform on which to spring forward. So that's what it is for us. We're ready. We're ready to do the work. We're committed to doing this work, and we're especially committed to ending racism and improving the human rights, lives, and livelihoods of all people of African descent. Doing that as a forum, doing that with our allies in all spaces where there are people of African descent and Black people.
Okay, so is there anything you would like to share with us that I didn't ask you this evening as we wrap up?
You know, I think, again, I am hoping to have more people from the Caribbean engage us more strategically. I want to hear from the Caribbean. I want to, you guys have been fantastic so far. You've certainly been engaging with the forum, but I want to hear from other countries as well, all countries in the Caribbean. Some have been more quiet than others, but I would like to see that kind of enthusiasm at all levels of our societies. So persons who are interested in learning more about the forum and who we are and what we do. I would like Caribbean civil society to rely on us, to call on us, to engage us, to have us speak with you. I know you've had Dr. Suma there in Trinidad recently, and she's a phenomenal colleague and an ally on these issues for many, many years. So I would say, you know, continue to embrace us, continue to we appreciate your support, but continue to have us also speak with you so that we better understand what it is we want as a region and how we can take this work forward. I also would love Caribbean governments to consider supporting us a little bit more as well in terms of hosting some of our initiatives and backing some of our initiatives. I'm just going to say it financially as well. So we know that we have the support of our leaders, and we appreciate that very much. And I feel it. June and I both feel it. We know that we have the support of CARICOM. We had the Secretary General there at the recent meeting, at the fourth session, which was fantastic. We had CARICOM on at least one or two of our panels. So yes, but we want to see Caribbean communities embracing us more strategically and inviting us to join you, to speak with you, either online or in person. And we have to think about that more strategically. That's my only thing with Caribbean. The Caribbean, I would invite them to join us and to partner with us and remind them that we're in the same fight for the human rights of all people, particularly people of African descent.
Great. I'm sure we're going to have you back on this forum, and I'm going to take your suggestion to my National Committee on Reparations, and perhaps we might agree to invite you to speak to us on the national community, hopefully in the near future. Thank you so much for coming on the show this evening. Thank you for those brilliant ideas and for giving us hope, because we do need hope going forward as well. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ruskin, for sharing your frequency with us, and for the listeners who have joined us on 91.1 Talk City. Thank you very much. And if you left us earlier, you can, of course, take in the show, the rest of the show that you would have missed, on Facebook and YouTube. And, of course, those of you on Facebook and YouTube, thank you for joining us this evening. We look forward to having you again next week, same time, 8 o'clock, for another edition of Indaba, the program where knowledge grows, the program of the Emancipation Support of Trinidad and Tobago, the Emancipation Support Committee. Renee, thank you for being with us earlier this evening, and of course our producer behind the scenes, Akia. Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing Gaynel on the program as well. Thank you and good night. See you next week.